The Winona Sports Network welcomes you to Thunder Talk. Thanks to Arcadia Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, and Ram. Get all the dirt from Mississippi Thunder Speedway. Direct from Dan Bailey.
Hey, race fans, welcome to another edition of Thunder Talk on the Winona Sports Network, 99.3 FM, and streaming live on WinonaRadio.com. This is episode number 336, as we get ready for a couple of weeks of huge action, and that is not hyperbole, that is not an overstatement. Huge action at Mississippi Thunder Speedway, and I'm delighted to welcome to the program this week track owner Bob Timm. Bob, welcome to this week's edition of Thunder Talk.
Thank you, Dan.
We have got two almost unbelievably huge events coming up at Mississippi Thunder Speedway, and it starts this week with the return of the USMTS Stars and Cars, and then next week we have the big deal, the largest paying modified event in history, with $100,001 to win on the line for a Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday 4-day special event. Before we talk about any of those big events, I want to talk about your speedway, Mississippi Thunder Speedway, because you have put that track through a lot of changes for this 2024 season. There's been a lot of talk on social media and down in the pits about how the drivers are needing to kind of relearn the track because of the new clay surface that you brought in. But you probably have more time on that track than anybody, and you have to relearn it a little bit. So tell us why you changed the clay, and tell us what you're learning about this new clay surface that's on Mississippi Thunder Speedway.
Okay. Yeah, I'm learning a lot. Unfortunately, I knew there'd be a bit of a learning curve, but to even add to that challenge is just Mother Nature being the way it's been. There hasn't been a lot of opportunities to prepare it the way, I would just like to do it. A lot of times I'm working around whatever Mother Nature's throwing at us, so that's been a bit challenging. But first of all, we needed a thicker base, and so we needed new dirt, and the dirt that we had gotten over in the Winona area here was gone. There wasn't any more available, and so we didn't even really have the option to put the same stuff back on. So that was one thing. The other thing is we had been looking for some better dirt for a while. I shouldn't say better, I should say different dirt. Something that was a little less abrasive maybe, and a little bit higher clay content in it. And so when this dirt kind of came available just before winter hit us last fall, we went ahead and jumped on it. It's the same. The dirt came from the same area that the dirt on Deer Creek Speedway came from early last season when they were struggling a little bit early on. They found some dirt locally, and I was up by 52 just by Menards on the northern side of Rochester there, and we were able to get some of that down here thanks to Steve Yagi Trucking, and just kind of beat winter, and it's got a little bit more clay on it. It's a little bit less abrasive, but just having clay versus black dirt has been a big change for me. It's been a challenge just to know, how much moisture we can put in it, how tight we need to have it packed, how much we can loosen it up on race day to maintain it, and then also just kind of, how wet does it need to be so that when it starts to come off a little bit, is it dry and dusty, or is it something that lands up the speedway and has enough moisture to it to kind of work back into the surface so guys can race on it. So there's just been it's been a whole learning curve for me. I'm still learning as the weather changes here. I think I started out, decent with our practice night. I think it's probably one of the best nights we've had the Speedway so far when we had practice back in March or whatever. It was really, really good. And since then, I've actually struggled just a bit. And so first of all, I got it too tight, and then when it, as they raced on it, it was just nothing but fines coming off, and so it was just kind of dusty and dirty, and they weren't able. It took too long to get it up the speedway so we could race on it. And then since then, Mother Nature's kind of taken over and just gotten so wet that all I've been trying to do is just get it dried out enough to where we can race on it. So we ended up kind of tearing it all up here before last Friday. I mean, like 6-8 inches deep. Completely dug it up and put it all back together because the rain had kind of separated a little bit, had a little layering going on with the old material. So we tore it all up, mixed it all up again, put it back together, and worked very hard that week. But it's a big process to get it, get a good base, 6, 8, 10 inches deep in a single week. But we got to put it back together. And last Friday, then I left it a little bit looser for our races Friday night. Well, as you've seen, it got a little bit more character, and I think it was a little bit wetter and built a little bigger cushion than what I wanted it to have. So I think what I learned from that is that we got to be somewhere in between where we were at the beginning and where we were last week. So we got a little bit tighter this week, and we won't loosen it up quite as much on race day. But again, Mother Nature looks to be throwing a wrench to us on Friday morning. Here we got a band of moisture coming through. I think our area in particular is only supposed to be just a little under 210, so that alone won't hurt us any. But we just got to make sure that the second part of that front sets up a little bit south and east of us, as it kind of shows it happening right now, and hopefully we can avoid that rain later in the day. But yeah, it's been a challenge. It's a challenge to keep it together and have it in the condition you want, but also to have multi-groove racing and make sure that, you know, both the top and the bottom are grooves that people can compete with each other in. So it's a learning curve. I'm learning a little bit every week, and I'm hoping I get it better this week.
I would say one of the strong suits that you and one of your owner partners, Tyrone Lingenfelter, bring to the game is you have developed some great relationships with other tracks. And you mentioned that this clay is the same clay that's used at Deer Creek Speedway. Are you guys able to share notes, what's working, or do you want to try and have your track surface be a little different than their track surface, even though it's the same clay from the same area?
Well, obviously Deer Creek has a very good surface, a racy surface, and I would be probably very satisfied if we had a surface, or had our surface prepped similar to that on a week in and week out basis. We all have varying opinions of what really good racing surface might look like or be like. You know, a lot of the racers like it really smooth, and they like it to slow down and like it clean, and that's great, and it can provide for really, really good racing. But at times when you have it like that, you tend to race with one or two cars for a very long time. It makes it hard to advance your position very fast, you know. Now, when you have a bit more character, but you're walking a fine line here. When you have a little bit more character, it tends to make people have some errors here and there and move around, and it gives people opportunities to change their lines as they pass through the corner and find different ways to get through the corner faster. I think overall allows people to advance their position maybe more and faster. But again, it's a bit of a fine line, you know what I mean? You don't want so much moisture to be so loose that it's just wide open all night. Everybody's just on the gas wide open. You don't want it to be super rough so people are tearing up equipment. So, and I think, you know, I talk with Mike Sorensen a lot, obviously over at Deer Creek, and while he doesn't do track prep, he pays attention to what's going on. He has opinion as well, and I think our opinions are very close to each other and what, you know, kind of a quality racing surface is like. And just having a super smooth, slick surface isn't always optimal for entertaining racing, and that opinion might come a little bit at the expense of the satisfaction of some of the racers. I get that, but at the same time, we gotta walk that fine line between, you know, what's really easy on equipment and what the drivers like and what's entertaining for the fans as well. So it's a difficult thing, and there's varying opinions, and so I think I understand everybody's opinion and respect everybody's opinion, and so I try to be somewhere a little bit in the middle where, you know, those guys that like it smooth and like it slowed down get a little bit of that, but also the guys that like a little character and like to use the gas pedal. And also from a fan's perspective, they get to see the cars go fast. I'm
going to make an analogy here. I am going to compare you to a farmer. I mean, a lot of people in the area, you know, come from farm families, and they may think at first that this is a stretch, but let me play this out here for a moment. I watch you down in the pits, in the infield of the racetrack on a race night, and you are watching that track. I know sometimes you're watching the racing. You know, you're a former racer and a race fan yourself. But it seems to me like you are really studying that surface, that dirt, that clay. Do you get to the point where you can see the track developing and you can think to yourself, all right, I'll give it one more race and then I'm going to have to go do X, Y, Z to it? Are you getting to the point where you know the surface that well?
Absolutely. I mean, I'd like to think that I've kind of been in that position for a while now. This dirt's a little bit different than what we had. It has the ability to be drier and more black for a longer period of time before you would get like a lane of rubber start to develop or something like that. So I have the opportunity to kind of let it slow down a little bit longer before I feel like I have to go out there and sprinkle it. Mm-hmm. But it isn't always about that. Sometimes it's about just the way the weather is, the humidity in the air, the sun, the wind, the temperature, and maybe that top groove is just too dusty for anybody to be able to run up there, and it needs a little moisture to get people to move up there to get it cleaned off so that you can run it. There's so many factors, and sometimes you maybe, think about it too much and second-guess yourself too much, and sometimes maybe I feel like I should let it go a little more and don't do anything. And you can be thrown off by the drivers and what they're doing. You could have one heat race come out, and every single person goes to the bottom, and you think, man, there's no top groove. Everybody's on the bottom, and you're about ready to go out there and sprinkle the top, and then the next heat comes out, and it's got a couple guys in there that like to run the cushion, and they go out there and pass everybody on the top. So it's hard. So, you got to watch, look at it. You also have to pay very close attention to the drivers. Obviously, I've gotten to know everybody's styles that races at our facility very well, and so I know who to look for when they come out, as if, this guy's going to tell me whether that top groove is competitive at this point or not, So I kind of watch for that, and it's actually pretty stressful, honestly, because I know the most important thing is that we have an entertaining product on track, and I don't sleep good when that doesn't happen.
Speaking of nights coming up, I alluded to this earlier, 2 really big events. I mean, the whole season is chock full of fun and exciting action at Mississippi Thunder Speedway, but these next 2 weeks, my goodness. First of all, the return of the USMTS Stars and Cars, the USMTS Spring Shootout tonight at Mississippi Thunder Speedway, 12th Annual. That's got to feel pretty good, having the USMTS cars back at MTS.
Yeah, we're actually pretty excited to have them back. I think, we had kind of a 1-year hiatus there where scheduling conflicts and things just did not work out for us to have an event. So it's pretty excited to be able to get them back on the schedule for this year. A very, very busy, early season schedule. I wish we had them spread out just a bit more than what they are, but it's just the way it worked out, and so we're going to go ahead and get all our big shows in here right at the beginning. It kind of starts with this USMTS show, so we're super excited to have them back. I'm excited to see them on the new surface, and the surface isn't just new either, Dan. I don't know if we mentioned this or not, but the front straightaway used to be about 55 feet wide, and the front straightaway is now 80 feet wide like the rest of the track. And what that means is it's a lot shorter distance around the bottom. So we had so many top dominant nights of racing that I wanted to make sure that we made the bottom more competitive, and that's how we did that, is just made it a shorter way around. So I'm pretty excited. The USMTS series has a good variety of drivers that like to run high, low, middle, like slick, like traction, and so they will be all over that track. They won't follow each other, and so I'm really excited to get learn a little bit about how the track actually races with a different group of cars on it.
And then the following week, 4 days of almost unimaginable excitement, starting on Wednesday with practice and qualifying for the big deal, $100,001 to win modified special event. 10, 12 years ago, you kind of rocked the modified world putting together the B-Mod Nationals. That was a big payday for B-Mods. And then we had the modified Nationals, $40,000 to win, and that set the bar pretty high. Everyone was talking about Mississippi Thunder Speedway about 3/4 of a year ago, when discussions or rumors started happening on social media about a $100,000 to win modified event. You, as a former modified racer, that must have just tickled you pink, huh?
Absolutely. It's something I've wanted to do for a really long time. It's kind of been a bucket list race for me to try and promote since I've owned the track. I've always wanted to do a $100,000 to win modified race. I kind of made that known to a couple different people throughout the years here, and finally kind of came up a little bit, and we got in conversations immediately about it and kind of put this deal together to have it at MTS. And man, I would have never in a million years expected it to kind of go down the way it's gone down. The field of drivers and the quality of the talent from all different types of classes of dirt track racing that are going to be in attendance competing is really almost beyond belief. For those people that like dirt track racing, whether you like modifieds, whether you like late models, you got to be just thrilled to see this event take place. And I don't know how you can miss it. It's going to be the best of the best drivers competing against one another in cars from varying sanctioning bodies with slightly different rules. I think it's anybody's bet, who might take hold with $100,000. But the one thing for sure is that when we whittle that down to those final 24 cars, you're going to have the best dirt track racers in the country on the track.
And it's going to be 100 laps for $100,001 to win, which I think brings us right back to where our discussion started, and that's track prep. I mean, 250 plus cars going to be hammering down on your racetrack for 4 nights in a row. So do you have to try and do something different with the race surface to try and handle that volume of, that car count and the power that they're going to be putting down? Or is it just you do what has worked for you and you try not to change anything?
The thing that you need to do is you can bring back the surface. We have the equipment to bring back the surface pretty much at any time in about 20 minutes. And so what you need to do is make sure that you got a solid base. So you start out with, a good base underneath the surface you're going to race on that won't break apart, so you can have a reasonably smooth racing surface. And then above that, you have to have some moisture in the ground and have it packed very tight. And you want to maintain that moisture throughout the weekend. You don't want to let it dry out too hard. And then just work that top inch and a half that's left on the top. You want to get that wet and loosen it up, and that's kind of what you race on every single night. So as long as you do that and you have the equipment to go ahead and loosen the surface up a little bit each night, get some moisture down in it, you can prepare it each day so that's the same race time, and you can bring it back to life during the night as the car's kind of wearing out.
So as you mentioned, some huge names. I mean, it's like the who's who of dirt track racing going to be at Mississippi Thunder Speedway. These drivers who command respect from other drivers. I'm assuming that you're going to be hearing every minute of every day input from these drivers. You should do this, you should do that, prepare it this way, prepare it that way. Do you accept some of that input, or do you try to block that out and just say, I mean this in the politest way, this is my track and I'm going to kind of develop it the way I want to do it?
No, I think it would be ignorant to ignore it, but you do have to, I think, take it, absorb it, and kind of utilize the experience that you have in a way that makes the most sense to try and apply it and at which time you apply it, So I don't want to come across as arrogant, because, I still have a lot to learn. I learn every day. But I think I'm pretty confident when I say that nobody knows my race surface better than me. Mm-hmm. And I don't think that's really necessarily arrogant. I think that, I would make the argument after 16 years driving around on it, even with new dirt, it would be hard for somebody to just show up and race on it or watch from the stands and say that they probably know better what to do than I do. But that being said, at the same time, it doesn't mean that they can't have an idea or an opinion that I haven't thought of, or an idea or opinion on, a different way of doing things that I haven't thought of or tried that might not get me thinking and cause me to try, Yep. So I like the feedback. I like it when people talk to me about it and give me their opinions. And every once in a while, a lot of times it's kind of like I'm hearing it. Sometimes it goes in one ear and out the other because it's just typical feedback, Mm-hmm. But every once in a while, somebody says something that just gets my attention, mm-hmm. and I ponder on that for days sometimes, and then I try to maybe apply it some night and see if it makes sense, But it's not necessarily always just about track prep, but maybe what condition of the track should be in to produce the best racing, or the best opportunities to have side-by-side racing and passing. So I'm always open to feedback. I like it, especially people that have done it for a while and have experience. And then also just from sometimes people that are just in the sport and have raced for so long kind of get blinders a little bit. They don't think outside of the box. So sometimes people that really don't know a lot or don't have a lot of experience just watching from the stands come up with some ideas because they don't know any better. And sometimes when you think about it, it makes sense.
Yeah.
So I'm always open to that and try to apply it, and I never think I'm too smart or too arrogant to take advice from somebody, or at least listen to what they're saying and think about it. And I've learned a lot that way.
All right, so one last question. And I think it would be ridiculous for me to ask you to give us a name who you think is going to win $100,000. But I will. Let me frame it this way. Maybe this is a slightly different angle about winning for this big deal, for the big deal, $100,001 to win, coming up at the end of the May and the first day of June. We have some big names with a lot of experience, and let's be honest, some pretty big pocketbooks coming with them to Mississippi Thunder Speedway. And we have some very, very talented local drivers who may not have the name recognition coast to coast and border to border, but have a lot of success on this track. Do you think one of our local racers could be an upset and pick up a win against some of these big name, let's be honest, superstars who are showing up for this special event?
Absolutely. I don't think there's anybody that can say this or that person's going to win, but I think that clearly Jim Chisholm's performance over the last few weeks has to give people a pretty warm feeling about how he might perform at that event, being probably one of the fastest cars most consistently over the first month of the season here. But I think you also have to kind of look at, Brandon Davis, Jake, Lucas Schott, even potentially like a Dustin Sorensen. There's Dan Ebert, obviously looked very good last week. And there's a lot of those guys that could come here and kind of get it done. Even like a Jake O'Neill. There's several guys on that USMTS tour that are capable of coming here and getting it done. But I think, there's 3 or 4 local guys right there that I named off. I think that got to have a pretty good level of confidence coming into the show. But you're going to line up across from, Ricky Thornton and Jonathan Davenport. And, I could go on and on and on. The quality drivers from the late model division and many that have a lot of modified experience as well that, who knows, they're going to be tough. Those guys get behind the wheel of a good car and kind of get it dialed in throughout the weekend. They're going to be tough as well. So, man, I just don't think anybody knows, and that's what makes it so exciting.
Absolutely. The entire dirt racing world is talking about the big deal coming up at Mississippi Thunder Speedway. It starts Wednesday night, actually the 29th of May, with practice and qualifying, and then 2 programs, Thursday and Friday, the 30th and 31st, and then the championship night, the big deal, $100,001 to win for the Modifieds and the B-Mods being thrown into the show as well on Saturday, the 1st of June. And that is all preceded by the 12th annual USMTS Spring Shootout. So some great modified action coming up at Mississippi Thunder Speedway. Track owner and race surface master, if you don't mind me calling you that, Bob Timm. Thank you so much for joining us on this week's edition of Thunder Talk.
All right, thanks, Dan. Thanks for everything you do to promote racing in our area.
Tune in next week for all the dirt from Mississippi Thunder Speedway with Thunder Talk on the Winona Sports Network. Thanks to Arcadia Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, and Ram.